Oh, good. Welcome to the Scottish Paranormal Podcast. We have Ron Morehead on tonight and Mark Anderson co-hosting. Ron is an absolute legend in the Bigfoot field. And we just kind of got right into it now, and we welcome Ron and Mark into the show. How are you doing tonight, guys?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, it's been a busy week.
Very well.
Yes.
Very well. Thank you. Very well. Honored to be here.
No, I totally appreciate you coming on. As I said in the intro there, you're a legend in this field. And I mean, for me, getting you on, my listeners may not have a good knowledge of the Bigfoot field or Sasquatch field and understanding it. Some may not, but I think it would be good to get you on to have an introduction, maybe go over some of the stuff that you've talked about in the past, and then we can kind of go for there. I follow the kind of subject a little bit. So I've got a few questions I'd like to ask you and things like that as well. So, I mean, if you want to do a short introduction of yourself, and then we can go for there so that listeners know who you are, and then I'll explain that anyway in the introduction. If you want to kind of go ahead.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm known for the Sierra Sounds, which is recorded Bigfoot vocalizations we recorded during the 70s in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California, USA. And that's what's kind of got me here today with you guys, because I speak at conferences and things because they've been scientifically studied, and that's what makes them unique. We've had the forensic studies done on them, and anyway, I was involved with a group of hunters in 71 who came out with a story. I hadn't been a hunter there, but they were friends of mine. They came out with a story of a monster being up there, some kind of something really big. And one of the guys got freaked out so bad he wouldn't go back. So, their wives wanted to know how they were doing, because at that time they didn't know what they were dealing with. It was going to eat them or carry them away or what was going on. So they, he said he'll go back and check up on him if I go with him, but he didn't want to go back by himself. And to my knowledge, he hadn't been up there since to spend the night. He's just a very religious person, didn't know where to put this in his conditioning he's had his whole life in the churches and stuff. And we're all pretty much the same way. You don't know where to put this because it's just Bigfoot wasn't on our radar. And anyway, that's got me in camp. That was 1971. I seen their foot impressions and heard some recordings. These guys had went back in after they got the first encounter and took some little cassette recorders with them. And so that's what I heard to start with. And I started going up there as often as I could. And we kept encountering these things. It wasn't until the winter of 71, 72, when we were snowed out of that area, that the leader of our group, Warren Johnson, he wrote a 23-page letter to Ivan Sanderson, a cryptozoologist here in the United States. And he thought somebody was pulling his leg, because this doesn't happen to people where they have multiple encounters, and a family of them actually coming in and doing this stuff. So he did send it off to a man named Peter Byrne here on the West Coast. There on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast now. But Peter got it and read it and thought the same thing, but he sent it down to a reporter, Alan Berry, in Redding, California. And actually, Alan thought the same thing, but he thought it might be worth going down and talking to these guys because he was closer. And but I didn't know any of this was going on, but I read the correspondence later years on. When I got Al Berry's file, he let me see that stuff. But yeah, we invited him in '72 to he wanted to go in and see what was going on. So he was an investigative reporter. He had a master's in science, so he wasn't anybody's, he was a very smart person.
Yeah.
And he just he started experiencing the same thing and tried to figure out who was tricking us, because we all underestimated what they were. We thought they were just some kind of a big ape out there that hadn't been identified, which most people still search for that ape in the woods. But I gave that up some years back when I started researching just what they could be and what the experiences we had, which was pretty abnormal. I mean, lights, sounds that we couldn't identify, just strangeness, a lot of strangeness. And we just put it up on the shelf. And Al said, "Don't talk to anybody about the strangeness up here. You're invited to talk anywhere." And at that time, him and I started going around talking a little bit at the conferences. That was early '80s, probably, when we started doing that more. Because he'd already got the study back from a Professor Curlin at the University of Wyoming, which said they had not been manipulated. The sounds we recorded had not been manipulated. They were not speeded up, slowed down, or manufactured in any way. They didn't have a 60 cycle hum, which would have given it away as a pre-recording. They weren't pre-recorded or re-recorded. And so when you get a professor like that behind you, a professor of electroengineering, he said it represented an 8-foot tall piece that he checked this out with, compared to the human vocal mechanism, it represented an 8-foot tall person. Mm-hmm. But it has a vocal ability, and not just a scream or yell. It's a lot of people have heard these sounds. They've been all over the world now, and it's just interesting stuff. And when you got a professor at Texas A&M said he listened to him short. He says really powerful, too powerful to have been made human made, and represent an animal 8.5 foot tall. So that pretty much corroborates what Professor Curlin was saying. And anyway, then you got Scott Nelson, who's a cryptolinguist, got a hold of him, and that was in 1990. I forgot now, a long time ago. He's trained by the military as a cryptolinguist, and he heard him by accident, and he came out and wanted to interview me and Alan Berry too, and find the context of sounds. Asked if he could study him a little bit. And he did. He says, by the human definition of language, which is a morpheme stream of words like I'm talking now, it is representative of a language. Well, that puts it all together for me with one little element that I hadn't mentioned yet, and that's Dr. Lieberman, Brown University. He said, only humans have the mechanism for language. Mm-hmm. Out of all the creatures on this planet, only humans have that. So that kind of tells me there's a human component to these things, and they just put it in a hybrid type being. Of course, we're hybrids too, as far as I'm concerned. So we're all manufactured in a way. We got influence from, I believe, aliens, and I can talk about aliens now, but I didn't used to do that at all. But still a little bit of a twink in my background in my head, to say aliens, because it sounds so, but it is. They're here. And I witnessed a UFO up there, but I didn't talk about that much either, because it puts you in the woo-woo camp. And Al Berry, having a master's degree in science, he says, whatever you do, stick with science. Don't talk about this stuff. So I finally got the science, I think, that backs up everything. And it's the truth science, whether it's all the way from the atom throughout the cosmos. Quantum physics works in every element of your life, every day. It's working in us right now. Thing is, we believe in a three-dimensional environment, and that three-dimensional environment is everything based on Newtonian physics, which is just what you can see, feel, hear, all those senses that we have. Mm-hmm. That's our third dimensional element that we live in here. There's more dimensions going on according to quantum physics. And so that answers a lot for me. It did for a lot of the enigmas associated with these beings. But anyway, I got the sounds that's been scientifically studied. That's kind of what puts it on the map, I think.
Going back to just one kind of first off, I know obviously you mentioned lights and like UFOs and things like that as well. It's hard enough trying to convince people there's like, let's say for example, a Sasquatch, and then you need to tell them about all the other, as you say, woo stuff. People would say it's all woo stuff, but it's funny that, I mean, it's hard. People in other camps is I look at the paranormal field as a whole, and it's funny how you get different camps in it. So you'll get people who maybe in one regard will look at Sasquatch as two different things in regards to a living, breathing animal, and somebody else will see it as maybe like a more spiritual type thing. But then you look at the UFO camp, there's like loads of different things like that, and a lot of them don't even believe each segment of the paranormal field. Just going back to initially when the hunters were in that area before 1971, they'd hunted that area for a number of decades before that, hadn't they?
Since 1958,
yeah, but before they had the sighting. And was the sighting that the hunter had, was it a multiple kind of sighting, the different people seen it, or was it just one hunter seen it at that time?
Well, it happened over several years, starting in 1971. Prior to that, Bigfoot, they put everything off to a bear or something like that. And, when their things were disturbed or whatever. But there's a shelter up there now. Keep in mind, it's 8 miles into the wilderness, and it's a very imposing area to get to. There's nobody else around that you can find anyway, and there's no tracks or any signs that anybody's been around. And it's 8,400 feet in elevation. The camp is, and so you get back there and you see the area. You understand that it's really pretty ridiculous that somebody could be tricking us. However, people do those things. So that's what Alan Murray was out to see who could be tricking us up there. And we've taken a wildlife biologist in there to see if there's any signs of speakers or wires. And that was the advice of a scientist back east who said that study should be done. So he did a flora-fauna study on the camp, and just very unique what was happening. And again, we underestimated what we're dealing with at the time. So I forgot your question now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. When you initially built the shelter up there, was the shelter just to start off with for other wild animals, keeping you safe from bears, for example, or did you build the shelter because of these creatures?
No, the shelter was already there when I started growing up. It had been there for years. The Johnson brothers had reinforced it, and there's a group of trees growing in a round circle type of effect, and they wrapped a cable around the trees. We hauled it in on mules, or they did, and they leaned deadfall up against those cables, and then strapped the cables across the top, and then put deadfall up there, and put plastic over that deadfall, and then alder brush over top of that. So basically, get out of the weather.
Yeah.
And if it's raining or something, you can get in there. And also just to feel better, there's a lot of bear up there. And we saw a lot of bear and counted them and all that. So, but these were not bear, I guarantee you that. They're unique. But I think what happened in one night, this is what happened in 71, when they really let their presence be known. Now, they may have been messing with them before that, but these guys never put it together with a Bigfoot. But in 71, they left a hot teapot out on the stove that I keep saying we, because I took one in too later on, but a stove we'd manufactured, put together up this, hauled in on mules and put it together up there. And there's a hot teapot there, and they'd been leaving food out because they didn't eat it all. And whatever happened, this was really frightening to them. Whatever they think, Warren Johnson thinks that one of them spilt the hot tea down his throat or something and burned him, because there's really some ruckus going on out there. And they realized that was not a bear. Bears don't do that. And anyway, later on, when all this stuff stopped, the ruckus stopped, the food was gone, but they went out there and saw this huge track, 18-inch track right there, and beside the stove in the mud, because there was mud up there at the time. And that kind of laid them onto this. Someone's got a Bigfoot. That's whatever's out here is big. So but they're avid hunters. These guys could shoot the tail off a gnat, with a 44 Magnum. They're really, really good avid hunters. And so they came out anyway and told the other guys, everybody up there. That's when I got involved. Is when they all went up there and they're experiencing the same thing from these families with these things coming around. one of the guys got frightened off so bad he just was shaking, because it's pretty frightening when you first hear the sounds. They're pretty aggressive, and it wasn't until 3-4 years later, 1974, when they had calmed their sounds down, and the cryptolinguist has listened to all this. He's a 2-time graduate, by the way, of the Language Institute of Military Institute of Foreign Languages, who spent his career in the Navy to transcribe languages or sounds that comes in from foreign areas, and he's trained to see if there's any manipulation, if it's a code or if it's a language. If it is a language, what could it signify? You know, is there any trickery in it or whatever? So he got a hold of them, say by accident, and he said they have language. But when Dr. Lieberman at Brown University said that about language, well, that to me puts the dots together for another picture. They have a human component to them. I got ahead of you again, but
no, that's fine. No, that's okay. The whole kind of thing with the human component, when anybody ever finds any evidence in regards to hair, it always goes back to some kind of genetic human component within the DNA. Do you think that's because it's part of them, or it's been the DNA's basically been touched by humans or whatever else, or the hairs? You think it's got a human component to it?
Well, the ones we had up there in the Sierra Nevada mountains have a human component to them. They have language. I'm not sure they're all the same, because I believe different aliens have been here on this planet, and they have messed with the genome of different species.
Yeah,
and that's written about a lot in ancient texts and all that. So, what we had language that were very, very big, and so it's kind of got me into it. So, anyways, I've been doing this now for over 50 years, and it's been pretty interesting subject, to say the least. I've written a couple of books now, so
I could imagine. I mean, definitely an interesting subject. In regards to it. So when you were up there in like the early 70s, and you were recording with it was like, I think it was a cassette tape and stuff like that. You were taping the back in the day. Did you put the microphones? Was it just in the camp, or was it further away from the camp and things like that?
Some of the sounds that Alberti recorded, he had his microphone about 40 feet up behind the camp shelter. And I had a stereo microphone, a stereo cassette tape recorder, and I had these mics sticking out each side of the shelter, so I get a kind of a stereo effect of where they might be, and put a headset on. And I rigged up a Mercury switch so I could turn it on and off without making noise and all that stuff. So anyway, yeah, some of them were close and some of them were far away. And I say far away. They came in probably sometimes within a few feet of our shelter. And I could hear them walking around out there, bipedal walking. They all might have heard one. And Alberti's recordings were very clear. That's the ones he sent off to Professor Curlin to have studied. Anyway, most all of us just had tape recorders stuck in the walls of the shelter between the logs.
Did you see them at all when you were up there? Sorry, Mark, you were going to go there.
Sorry to butt in. What I'm really interested in, Ron, is just a bit about the area and the history itself. So close to where Chris and I live, there is a really ancient monument, and there's been Bigfoot, of what we call wild men. That's maybe a smaller version of a Bigfoot. And could you just maybe tell us about like the Sierra Nevada mountains, in particular the area where you've been seeing these things, please?
Well, it's there's a huge mountain range, probably 400 miles long and several miles wide in different spots. So a lot of people have spotted these things around there. It's not unusual to spot them. What's unusual is to have repeated encounters with them. And yes, I have seen one, by the way, Chris, in 1974 when I was interacting with them, actually, because we knew we figured they wasn't going to eat us by then.
Yeah.
They hadn't carried us away. They weren't, being aggressive, just very elusive. And we got glimpses of them, did that night in 74, which is a long time coming for me. The other guys had gotten glimpses occasionally. Me and my friend Bill had gotten a glimpse that night, and that was exciting because I recorded what they call the samurai cry, and it's on my tapes. But I happened to they started messing with us before we ever got to shelter that night. Just he and I brought supplies in, and we heard the wood knocks, the rock clocking, and rhythmically, and and we learned just to ignore them, and then start doing things even closer. So that's what we did. And Bill was putting the horses away, and I was taking the packs off and stuff like that. I was getting the fire going for dinner, and but they had already gotten there before we did, so they saw us, or witnessed us leaving or packing or something, like coming up from below before we ever made the trip. And I believe they watched us the whole way. I saw a big tracker on the trail perpendicular to the trail. Prior to that, we had our mules and horses get really disturbed out the bottom, which we didn't think much of it then. It could have been a bear, a deer, could have been a snake, whatever. And anyway, that's kind of depicted on the front cover of my book, Voices in the Wilderness, that scene right there. I think there might have been a Bigfoot there, because if you follow the ravine up where that happened and see the trail way up there, there's a print right there where he would have came out if you could have went that way, which we couldn't go that way. But anyway, when we got to camp, they started doing their stuff, which was popping, whopping, whooping, and that's when I interacted with them with my vocal, trying to mimic them. And next morning we found that they had been there actually before we got there. We knew that because we had resurfaced the top of the shelter that summer with fresh plastic and put fresh alder on it. And it dried up by the time that time of the year it came. And there was 2 fresh alders that had been twisted off over by the spring. Huge, that big around. And a human couldn't do that. Excuse me. And there was a big footprint right by our shelter door out to the left of it as you go in, which we didn't see that night. But Bill had dropped the dust cover off his rifle and it fell in that track. He didn't know at the time. Next morning, I went over the door and looked out there and saw the dust cover. I seen it was laying right inside a track, and it wasn't mashed down. So I know that it was there before we were. I write about that in my book. So that's it was kind of a fun time. Exciting.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing.
And so as far as how it is up there, it's just beautiful wilderness. There's springs. We have a spring right there. There's a lot of boulders up high country, but there's also a lot of huge trees, and very pristine. Sierras are a nice mountain range.
Where's in regards to other places I take it you've been a lot of other places trying to investigate and look into Sasquatch or Bigfoot. Where other places have you seen like the most activity in regards to where you've been before?
Most activity outside the United States?
Or anywhere, just anywhere, even within the United States?
Well, most of it's in the United States. Most of the reported ones, anyway. In northwest, up in Washington, Olympic Peninsula has a lot of that stuff. And I went to Siberia and went out the way. I was in Russia first of all. I spoke at the Darwin Museum there for some reporters and stuff, and they took us clear over into Siberia to look for take us to where the wild man, they say, hangs out.
Yeah.
And so it was adventurous, nice, fun. I've been in South America a couple times. Expeditions where the scientists checking out the elongated skulls down there to see what they might represent. My interest in that was to see if it had anything to do with the sagittal crest that's often reported on Bigfoot in this country. They have a pointed head, that's what we call a sagittal crest. So there is a crumb trail that leads from Central America, from South America all the way up to Central America. The Incas have stories about warring with the Mayans and the Aztec in Central America. And you got the Mayan story about warring with giants in the north. That took me into the Lovelock Caves in Nevada, and I've been there 4 times. I'm trying to get access to the artifacts they found there. 100 years ago, but it's all been taken away by the Smithsonian, so you can't really see it now. But they deny that there was any giants there, but the Paiutes don't. The Paiutes say they were cannibalistic giants. They drove into the cave and burned them out. But I think some of them probably survived. That takes me close to the Sierra Nevada mountains, where there's been several reports. You got the Minaret mummies, which were found in Martindale mummies, which were found in Yosemite, actually. And you've got the Minaret skull, which was found by Dr. Denton when Boy Scout troops into the Minaret, California, Minaret, Sierra Nevada mountains again. And you got a lot of reports, really. That's just two. And that skull got sent off to UCLA, and it just turned up missing. Chase that down. Al Berry did. They just figured it was somebody's ashtray now or something. You don't know. A huge human-like skull.
Why do you think? Well, going back to some of the there's loads, as you know, that there's through history right across the world. There's always stories of giants and bigger people, or even wild men and things like that as well. But if you just take it to the giant aspect to it, why do you think they would like try and cover it up like the Smithsonian, and they basically take the skeletons and you try and confiscate things and skulls and things like that as well?
Well, yeah, if giants are determined to be real by science, it's going to destroy the narrative that they've taught us all our life. You know, we're all conditioned to believe certain things. And once they change their narrative, they got to control the narrative. That's just all there is to it. So if they can't explain the giant, they try to make fun of it or control it some way. But they're finding more and more of it nowadays. So the word's going to get out, and it's already getting out. You know, these things used to be here. They're here now, I can tell you that. I was taken into Alaska here a couple of years ago by the Discovery Channel to help with a village. I don't know if you've heard that story or not, but it was on the Discovery Channel, an 8-part series. And they, Portlock, Alaska, they had, in the late 1940s, they had a Bigfoot-like creature, 12, 15 foot tall, that was mangling some of the villagers. And it was a fishing village. And they just closed up and left, went somewhere else. And the heirs from those people wanted to reestablish the village because it was such a good spot for fishing. And they flew me in on a helicopter, so I circled the area quite a bit and saw where they had timbered it a lot also. And the pictures I saw, they were overfishing it too from the pictures. And the timber you see in the new growth coming up, it just seems where the old growth was too. And they were also mining the area, and I got a feeling, and I told them, I think there wasn't enough respect for the land, that these things, if they live out here, and they don't want to be disturbed like that. And I found out over the years too, of all my investigations and all, that these things would really have a problem with us cutting trees down and disturbing the forest like we do. And I got other theories about that too, why, stuff like that, but it goes on and on.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, like, I mean, my interest in is coming from a Scotland point of view. We've got a mountain range called quite a lot of mountains, but we've got a mountain range called the Cairngorm Mountains. We're not a big country, but the land before the land masses split up, the Cairngorms were part of the Appalachian mountain range, and they still kind of hold events and things like that up in the Cairngorms to do with the Appalachian mountain range, because it was at one point part of that before the continent split. And in that area, there's been multiple sightings, like for probably one of the main kind of sightings come for the 1800s. And it's called the Big Grey Man. There's a few kind of books wrote on it and things like that, but back in the day. But even before that, there's accounts going back before that as well. And the interesting thing that you find if you follow the Sasquatch Bigfoot field, as you alluded to earlier on, with the amount of different phenomena it comes attached to it, with light phenomena and things like that, or kind of quantum phenomena and mind speak and things like that. And the interesting thing with reading some of the books, or like one of the books, it's one of the more prominent ones. It was written in probably the early 90s, but it was a collection of stories from mountaineers and other kind of prominent people that they got the stories from. And there's stories of things like that with some light phenomena, and there's stories of people being on the mountain and it's almost like they're talking to somebody and going away in a trance. And the author back in the day didn't have the data, which we've got now in regards to the sightings, and through all the number of years, all the kind of Sasquatch and Bigfoot encounters with all these different type of phenomena. So he never kind of linked them together. He just put it in a kind of basket with there's just multiple different phenomena on these mountains, as well as these big creatures which have been seen, or they follow people and things like that. You know what I mean? So I find it extremely interesting, that aspect of it. I mean, but going back to just to pick your brains in regards to apart from the Smithsonian and things like that, Smithsonian, sorry. Have you ever? You probably have, right? What's your kind of theories on military involvement in regards to trying to cover it up, and things like that as well? Because I've heard stories like that before, or fish and game trying to cover it up as well.
Yeah, I've heard of that, and they have to cover it up because again, if they can't control it, they have to control it.
Mm-hmm.
The government does. So yeah, I've heard of that happening in Mount St. Helens when it blew up, and different places where the government got involved. They have a agenda, and the agenda is to keep us in the need to know basis. Mm-hmm. Much as we'd like to know a lot of this stuff, they keep it from us, and that's too bad. But they're having to let some of it out now. Like we found out that the Roswell, New Mexico flying saucer was really a flying saucer with aliens on it. You know?
Yeah.
Well, for a long time it was a weather balloon, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's just one of the ways that they do.
Tinfoil and balsa wood.
Yeah. See, what I thought was interesting is I've heard of somebody in Alberta, Canada, who claims to have had like almost like a connection to Bigfoot. And what seems to me was really strange, Ron, is that there's like certain like Native American Indian tribes that seem to have quite a negative view of Bigfoot or Sasquatch, while other people have a very positive view. And I'm just wondering what's your thoughts on that, and why, and what the difference is between these two like very contrasting types of perceptions, basically.
Well, it's probably true in their minds, but there's different types of these things out there, and I think alien intervention into the genome of species, probably the primate species, has been happening more and more with different types of aliens. There's more than one type of alien out there too that's on this planet, and really depends on the agenda they have. If they're aggressive, watch out, because but they're not supposed to interfere with us and our karma. We're a very chosen people here, and we're very fortunate to be humans. But yeah, the Native Americans have different lores. A lot of times they would con their women into the forest to take them as mates, and that's another reason I think there's a dilution factor going on too. A lot of Native American lore says they bred with their women, and that would cause someone to be more human-like than others, and that's just one element. A lot of them say they're here to help you because you mentioned mind speak a while ago. Well, that's how they can help you, because they can't really make the choices for us. We have to make our own choices depending on our karma. That's how we graduate and get out of this joint. Someday we all pass on. Energy can't die, according to quantum physics. We have two parts to our body: the physical embodiment that we have, and then you got the etherical part, which is our spiritual or consciousness, and that's what doesn't die. And so that almost sounds religious, but it's really not so much. It's just spirituality. And we're all spiritual beings, whether we like it or not. And I think we're here to respond to experiences. And if I don't say anything else in this broadcast, that's important. I think it's very, very important that we respond properly to our experiences. We can't consider ourselves a victim. We have to take everything and learn it and learn from it.
In your last, in your new book, is it about, you're actually talking about quantum physics and the Bigfoot phenomenon? Could you tell us a bit more about that, please, Ron, about because that was something I would never have thought of interacting, would be quantum physics and Bigfoot. So what's your views on the similarities between the two?
Oh yeah, I love it. That's what I've been hinting at all since we started here. But what got me into that is well, who we are as humans, because I was raised religiously, you know, but I'm a spiritual person now, not a religious person. I don't associate myself with a church necessarily, but when I get into quantum physics, I find out that, like what Tesla said, well, one man calls God, another one calls quantum physics. To me, quantum physics is it goes beyond classical science, which we all live in a third-dimensional environment. But what one man calls God, another one calls quantum physics. So to me, they're synonymous. And so if you want to really understand more, you have to learn what the masters have been saying from the old, you know, how they did things. Well, they did it mostly through love and compassion. And that's what we have to learn to do and be. And once we're that way, then you're on the realm to the right spot in the universe. But quantum physics is deep, and you won't understand it all, because unless you can understand how the end of the universe works, well, you won't understand quantum physics. However, the math in quantum physics is what makes it acceptable, because the math has shown that certain things are correct, and it has to be disproven by mathematically, because you never see quantum physics. It's like our cell phone. You don't know how that works. We don't know how this is working right here. Well, I don't. It's strange how you guys would be talking to me from Scotland. Here I am in the United States, you know, and we're live, you know, real time. Well, how's that working? You know, it's working. So quantum physics is with us every day. It's just creeping into our lives more and more. Artificial intelligence is going to take over here one of these days, and we'll really see it creep. But quantum physics is how they're doing artificial intelligence and a lot of other things on this planet. I know the unanswered questions we had at our camp was sounds that sound like our camp was being tore apart one time, and we looked out the shelter door later on when it stopped and nothing had changed. Well, how do you explain that? You know, did they hypnotize us all? What happened? Were we listening to another dimension? What, I don't know. Other times so many things have happened up there that's just strange. The David Pilates episode that he presented, the missing 911. He did a 15-minute episode with me in it. I let him go to the camp, took him up there, and he was a videographer. And I got about 15 minutes on that DVD. I think it's free if anybody wants to watch it. It's really pretty good.
Yeah, it's good.
And he showed the representation of this elongated light by us up there, which I showed his videographer where it went and how it went. And he did a real good depiction of that on that film. But that's strange. I mean, what do you do with that? People just don't see that every day, you know. It just comes floating through the trees, elongated light, probably 3-4 foot long. And it's just a form of energy. But nothing surprises me up there. It's times when I heard what I thought was a big, huge tuning fork above our heads in the daytime. You can't find the source of it. It just sounds like that. Sometimes you think you hear a herd of horses coming towards you, and there's not a herd of horses coming towards you. You know, just strange stuff. One time, well, there's a lot of stories. I go on for hours about the stories, but quantum physics is where it really boils down to, okay, they know something we don't know. They're able to do something we're not doing yet. We haven't evolved that far yet. I think they've been here longer than Homo sapiens, some of them. A lot of them have diluted down, and a lot of them are more human-like, but some of them are newer than others, different than others. They toy with humans, I got to tell you that. They mostly do this at night, witching hours between 2 and 4 in the morning, or 1 and 4, something like that, when I think the Earth's vibrational frequency goes down as ours does too, and we're able to seep into our consciousness a little bit when we're in that alpha state of awareness. So I'm not answering your question very well, am I? I
No,
just start.
it's what I find interesting is the areas. Is there something like a unique energy about the areas, or is there that seems to maybe attract these things? I'm interested in quantum physics as well. I've been studying AI and even spoke about AI, and to an element of degree, I was actually looking at quantum computing as well. So I do find it very, very interesting, and I do think there are similarities between the paranormal and quantum physics. But my knowledge of it and my understanding of it is quite low. But what I find really interesting as well is the types of communication, because again, it seems that some communication seems to be is guttural the right answer, but from looking at some of your research, it seems to go beyond what humans can hear. So, can you maybe tell us about the types of different communication they've got, and maybe not the vocal communication, but any other form of communication that you've seen on?
Well, there's called the, you know where the pineal gland is in the middle of
Yes.
your head.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that has to be, that is our receptor, in my opinion, and that's what the Egyptians depicted on the pictographs, and that's what has been talked about. The eye of Horus, it's a third eye, your consciousness, but you don't take light to see with it. It's like an eye though, except you don't have to see, you have to have light, but it is connected to the heart, and that heart has a mind of its own too, and that's what will give you a gut feeling. That gut feeling, though, has to be connected to your outside brain. I say outside brain because it's our analytical conditioned brain that's been taught certain things, and we have to learn to listen to this, which is connected to the heart. The heart will tell you something, but your mind has to be in coherence with that. So you have to learn how to meditate and get that done, get that coherence done, so they're all right. That's what chakras are all about. That's what a lot of the ancients taught, how to become one with that. That's how you become one with the universe, really, how you can receive what's right and what's wrong for you, because your mind is going to tell you to go over there because that's where all the money is, something like that. But your heart might say, well, this little old lady needs help across the street. Well, you got to do what your heart is. That's what it's all about. We spend our whole life trying to accumulate things, trying to climb this ladder of success. Well, success is being happy now and helping people. That's how you be successful, in my opinion. And I've been very successful in business. I was one of those guys that had all the toys, airplanes. I had everything I wanted, and I did quite well in business. But I realize now in my older age, I was 29 when it started with me, so I figured do the math. That was 1971, and I just I've learned that happiness is being okay with yourself as a human, know how special we are, and what frequency we were designed to be in, and we're not in that now. We're only in the third frequency. I think we have to go where the Anunnaki were. Some of them were fallen. Some of them came to Earth and started influencing mankind. And you read the Mesopotamian Sumerians and all that, and you get into just what they did. How that relates to Bigfoot, I think, is kind of important too, because if they were created by the same thing to do work or whatever, we need to find out more about the Bigfoot creatures to know more about ourselves too.
Going back to the light phenomena, with the beam of light you mentioned in the video, which is, I find it interesting, that aspect here. Do you think the beam of light was connected to the Bigfoot up there? And I mean, like, or do you think it was just the area? Do you think actually that was it, and maybe the process of transformation or a process of coming from somewhere? Or,
well, in my belief, because it's just everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. We know that from physics, right?
Yeah.
At the most minute level of our existence, we are energy, frequency, vibration. We're vibrating at a frequency. And Einstein said, and I believe this is how the masters did the miracles, you find the frequency of anything, you can change its matter. You got Dr. Paul Dirac from 1933 won the Nobel Prize for antimatter. Antimatter is the direct exchange between energy and matter. Matter and energy are interchangeable. that was established firmly by CERN in 2012, the Hadron Collider over there. And so you get that knowing because you can't see energy, but you can detect it. Well, you can see the particle, but all of a sudden it's just detectable. That's all. And that's what they call a God particle. You know, it got kind of a little bit spooky there for a while. They don't know what they're dealing with. However, I think they do know what they're dealing with. It's just a matter of time before so much is happening right now on this whole planet.
Yeah,
we're going to see a lot of stuff. You guys will probably see more than I. It depends on how long it takes for this to come to a head, but it's coming to a head because the UFOs are here. Aliens have been here for ages. There's a hybridization program going on now. You know, just happening. It's all biblical too. If you want to get into
totally
prophecy.
is. Yeah, definitely. It's in every scripture. Go on when you know where to look. It definitely is.
Yeah.
Do you see? Obviously, the US government are now in regards to the whole. I take it you've potentially followed the disclosure process or the slow disclosure process. Do you see the US government as the potential disclosure of the secrets, or still the keeper of the secrets?
Well, they disclose it as long as they think we can handle it. They want to give us what they think they can handle, what they think we can handle.
Yeah.
And the Bigfoot thing is going to have to come out pretty soon because too many people have seen it. I mean, I've been speaking to crowds in the thousands, and that's mostly it's in the hundreds, but I spoke to a few that's in the thousands, and people are interested in this because more and more people are seeing these things, and more and more people have these questions. What are they? How come the government don't tell us about it? Well, I'm pretty sure the government knows about these things. They just they just can't control it. So what they're going to do? They break out and say, "Well, yeah, these things are alien intervention in the genome or something like that." Well, people are going to freak out, and they let us know about the UFOs and aliens, and they're only letting us know what they think we can handle. They got it all really, and I'm not sure how to say this. The government that we're voting in is actually the government that knows about everything.
Yeah.
There's a black undercover government that's really handling everything.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that decide what's going to be let out, what isn't.
The government behind the government. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's what's going on. I lost my earplug.
I think it's we're living in. You okay? You hear us?
Yes.
Yeah, we're definitely living in some interesting times. And see where this is going to go. I mean, it's I still find it frustrating where it's where the arrow they're still looking at lights in the sky and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It was like the Twining document going back to years and years and years ago. You know what I mean? It's like the statements in that were so far beyond what's even getting looked at now. And it's still kind of going at that pace, but I reckon there's going to be more coming soon. But to what end? I mean, that's the reason. I mean, I'm interested to know why they're trying to push it out now. That's the kind of main thing. I think there's maybe something that's turned their hand.
Yes.
There's either, I'm not saying it's negative in any sense, but there's like something's definitely turned their hand where it's like there's a date where they need to get this probably potentially pushed out before it's maybe mass panic or whatever. So
well, that's why I'm talking with you guys today. You know, I think this word has to get out that something's big is going to happen, and it's happening now as we live. And I think people just should be aware of what I've been talking about as far as us as human beings, what we're made in the image of, something very high frequential being, and we're not doomed. We're made to be in that same element. And we can only do that through our experiences or by graduating out of this dimension, which is going to happen. The Earth is it's alive too. You know, it's trying to evolve into a fourth dimension. And we have to go through that to get into anything else. And if you don't do it right this time, you got to do it right somewhere. You got to get it right. We got to get it right. You know, and the right is by love and compassion. It's just the only way to get it right.
I agree with that. Sorry, Ron, I interrupted you there. I've actually found with a lot of the spiritual practice nowadays that I feel that being compassionate and kind to people is actually probably the ultimate spiritual practice. And feel that people might want to see something or have a miracle, but actually the real spirituality aspect of it is just being kind to people on an everyday basis.
They can't get around the fact that we're all part of a oneness that's waiting for us if we just learn. We're a warring species, and that's just the way we are. We want to hurt people. War.
Yeah.
We always have been, and we got to stop that crap.
Yeah.
We got to. I mean, why don't people want to kill each other all the time over there? They get so wrapped up in their religious dogma that they just think no one's supposed to have their own thoughts or feelings or karma to deal with. Yeah, I wish that people could. Well, I guess I should run for Miss Universe or something.
It was
peace
just
for Earth, peace.
just you saying that kind of comment there got me thinking. I was tweeting or Xing, whatever it's called now, but on the internet. I think it was yesterday, the day before, and there's been some dates bandied about the whole disclosure process, and there's been dates being pushed out about 2027 as some type of event and things like that. You hear these things, and there was somebody comment about potentially is it something nefarious or this. I didn't get wrapped up in all that, and I said, well, if you're looking at something, if there is something coming, let's say there is something coming, and you're thinking it's nefarious, what's probably worse than ourselves now? You know what I mean? Look at what we do to each other and the planet and everything else. So I mean, it's not as if what could be worse than what we do to each other. So
Well,
I mean, we're potentially enslaved already in regards to I wouldn't say enslaved, but somebody controls the narrative that a lot of people follow.
I think we're all in for a lot between now and 2027. Because you're right, I've heard that before. 2027 is the day when just everything's got to change, and but we're on the edge of something pretty negative right now, and it could get even worse. So I'm not a pessimist by a long shot, and I don't like to put that energy out there because every thought is an energy.
Yeah.
So if we could get more and more people to just think positive about how they want things to be instead of how things appear to be, that'll help the energy flow the right direction, and then maybe help things change.
Definitely, yeah.
Do you think that there's a spiritual aspect to Bigfoot? And the reason I'm going to ask you this question is I've heard people actually having intense feelings of joy and love being close to a Bigfoot, and I just wondered if you've ever heard of anything like that. If there was any sort of teaching that these sort of these entities could provide to us.
These entities do what to us?
Like is any elements of them being of their spirituality or anything that you've noticed with that, Ron?
I think they are sentient entities with a consciousness, and like I say, they could be good ones or they could be bad ones. I think what we're dealing with in the Sierras were probably good ones because they didn't eat us. And we always had guns as a hunting camp. Wasn't a big deal one way or the other. We didn't have any intention of shooting at one unless it came at us through the shelter or even that night, but we never shot at them. They tried to intimidate us a lot, I think, in 71 and 72 when those aggressive sounds were being made. And that's a little frightening, but still, you're not going to shoot at someone. You don't know, first of all, what the other ones are going to do if you go to shoot one. And you don't know if your bullet's even going to help it or not, So it could have been we've just been all deaf now and been somebody's lunch or dinner. I don't know, but they're definitely there. They come out mostly at night, evening times, and I don't know if it's because they don't want to be seen or because they probably live underground or stay underground during the day, or some of them are just maybe interdimensional period. They just go out of your perception. We only see within light's frequency, which is 430 and 770 terahertz. That's the light's frequency. All these other frequencies are out there. So once they go out of that frequency of light, you're not going to see them anymore with your eyes. And they could be interdimensional. They could just, if they're made that way and they've got the attribute to do that, I think if they do it, they do it through sound frequency.
Mhm.
If they go interdimensional, even sound at its 40th octave will turn into light. So is Bigfoot and those orbs got anything to do with each other? I think they do. A lot of people said they saw Bigfoot actually disappear and then an orb appear. Well, these orbs they got an intelligence behind them.
Hmm.
Well, what I saw up there had intelligence behind it. And the Johnson brothers had orbs following them around above their head. They didn't know what to do about that, but what do you do? What do you do about any of this stuff? So just try to understand it. Just understand there's so much more out there that you don't see, feel, or can touch. A bear's olfactory sense is 20 times better than ours, so they're going to smell better than we do. We obviously don't see anything outside that frequency I just mentioned. And even your hearing, you don't hear ultrasound or infrasound. So if you understand your human limitations, you'll get along better with everything and realize that we're just not the king of the woods like we think we are. We go around shooting at things, and anyway, I don't hunt anymore, by the way. I don't believe in destroying anything. Just respond with everything in the best you can.
Definitely. I mean, no, I find it extremely interesting as well, just with the mixture there. You were discussing at camp and the light phenomena linked in with Sasquatch, obviously, as well, which it comes up in many cases. But even that still splits the kind of Bigfoot camp in regards to spiritual beings to flesh and blood, or a mixture of two, and things like that as well. But going back to Scotland, where the place is called Ben McDoo, when I was talking about the big grey man, and this thing had been in nominally kind of heard people following people, things like that, footprints in the snow. But then it had been seen a few times as well, a number of times throughout a number of years. But the area up there itself as well is linked with a lot of different phenomena. So obviously kind of magnetic anomalies, and there's actually a UFO religion uses an adjacent hill called, I can't remember the name of the hill, but they use it as a pilgrimage site for as part of the religion. It's called a Theory Society. So they use that place as well in the same area. And even then, they might not even knew the two things. They weren't linked, but it's interesting. It's the same area. And in the other part for the same area as well, there's a place called Devil's Point, where there was things supposed to have kind of manifested back in the day as well. So it's just this kind of congregation area. And there has been some recent sightings of this as well. So there have been recent sightings some type of wild man anywhere, or some type of Bigfoot creature. But I find it vastly interesting, especially here, because we stay in central Scotland. It's not a big country, as you know, but we stay in the central Scotland where it's mostly populated, and you still get we get a lot of strange accounts where we stay. We stay in an area where there's multiple different phenomena reported right across the board, for UFOs, for cryptid type beings, to everything throughout the years. And we find it really interesting. And the link that Mark said earlier on, you see quite a lot of this activity around past Neolithic burial sites and things like that. I know it's a kind of cliche if people say that, but it is for here anyway. We kind of find quite a lot of different UFO cases and that linked in around about the same area over decades. But that's the thing. The thing is as well, it's trying to, why I wanted you to come on as well is to, if people maybe aren't into the field, into the Bigfoot field, the Sasquatch field, because I never was personally, until a good number of years ago. I started, there's a guy I listened to further south in the country, and they had came across multiple phenomena and cryptids involved in it. And cryptids are never my thing. And I was always into UFOs and things like that, multiple kind of phenomena. And I didn't say I didn't believe in cryptids, but I never researched it in any sense. And when I started looking into it, the more and more I looked into it, the more and more I kind of thought, there's definitely something here. And definitely you can link it to a lot of different phenomena. I mean, you see, when you you follow this subject across the board as you have and as Mark has, and I mean, and you've been at it a good number of years more than us, but you do see similarities crossing across different paranormal fields, and that's what we're saying, getting you on, because there's maybe people that listen to my podcast who maybe are just into UFOs or maybe just into something paranormal, but maybe not looked at the cryptid field in any sense, and it's worth definitely giving it a look, because it's so interesting, and there's definitely something there. Where, you know what I mean? It's the only kind of thing I've ever had, I've never had any sighting or anything like that, but there's a place where there was a sighting back in the day, and before I knew that sighting had took place in this place, I had out running in this area, and I had a total sense of fear, like the fear factor. When you get the Oz factor, the fear factor, it was like that. And it wasn't until 20 years later I interviewed somebody, and it was just about 50 meters for the same spot as they had the sighting. But the sighting they seen, it wasn't like a flesh and blood type thing. It was like if you can imagine, it was like a bulky, large creature, but more like an ethereal type thing as well. In the woods. Full family seen it. Interesting story. But anyway, listen, Ron, thanks very much for taking the time to come on. I really appreciate your time. And the books you've got out so far, you've got and so you've got basically the Voices in the Wilderness and Quantum Bigfoot. Is any other books out there you want to kind of let the viewers know where we could find you and stuff?
Yeah, I've got another one just about ready to go. I'm writing another book, and I should have that out right after the first year. And I got 2 CDs too on my website, ronmorehead.com, and those are both all this stuff's downloadable too on my website if you don't want the hard copy of the books. I say hard copy, they're paperbacks, but they're going over well. I mean, there's a lot of stuff being said about them, so all are good as far as I hear. I don't know, you don't hear the bad stuff sometimes, but I rarely get challenged on anything. But if I do, I just say what I know and what I don't know and what I think and what I don't think. And at my age, I just want my word to get out that I think I put some more dots together that most researchers don't look for and don't try to. Most researchers are strictly in the flesh and blood only camp, and to me, nothing is just flesh and blood only.
Definitely
nothing is. We all have consciousness. We all have abilities that we haven't reached yet, haven't learned how to pursue and how to evolve into. However, all that's going to change for us here for a while. In my opinion.
I think the same as well. I'll put all the links to your website and your books and that in the show notes. And as I said, I really appreciate coming and going. I'm going to have a shout out to Jim and Bob. They were quite excited you were on tonight, so you maybe give them a shout out for us. They'd be well impressed at that. They see you as a Bigfoot legend. So that was Jim and Bob.
Okay. Jim and Bob.
Mark, are you ready as well, mate?
Yeah, can I just have 2 minutes? 2 minutes of your time, Ron? Because there's 2 questions I've been dying to ask you. The first one is before I have doing the research for the interview, and I noticed that you're a pilot and you're also a scuba diving instructor, and it's made me realise just before I came on here that it always seems that these sort of things are seen in like woodlands, for example. But I've also noticed that some of the times they can maybe have maybe different vocalizations which might be affected by the trees. Like I know sometimes they have you ever heard of anything like in water? The only time I've ever heard anything was an Australian encounter. I'm just wondering if you've heard anything like that, and does that make a difference? Because instead of having trees to hit on, they might communicate through some other way, like maybe through the water, which might be a bit different. I know it's a silly question, but I'm just wondering if you've heard anything like that.
I haven't personally. Alberry did. He saw something coming under the boat very fast down Southern California when he was heading off one of the islands out there. And I've heard that a lot of these things, and I have a belief that a lot of the UFOs are actually underwater.
Yeah,
They're
it's just
staying
when
underwater.
yeah, it's just that the water would change the speed of like the clicks or something like that you hear. And the very last question. Sorry to go on with this is there's a place in Scotland called Currymuir, and Currymuir is a small town, and it's most famous for being the home of Arthur J.M. Barry, who wrote Peter Pan. And there was some Bigfoot sightings around there recently, but sort of like 4 years ago, and there seems to be markings, like they'll mark something, and there was quite a distinctive way. It was like somebody had tied something around a fence. Have you ever seen these sort of markings, like the trees being or twigs being moved in a specific way that looks like some sort of communication in the Sierra Nevada mountains?
Well, no. I mean, I've seen stuff like that, but I can't put it off to Bigfoot just because it could be done by nature. It could be done by a person sometime. I seen some carving in trees, but that's a bass camp a long time before the Johnson brothers started going up there. And I can't say I've seen anything that I would really, even structures, a lot of them can be done naturally, but some of them aren't. I mean, it's not unusual for structures to guide the way for somebody else coming behind them, The Native Americans used to do that a lot just to show who was coming behind them, where to go. So that wouldn't be unusual. It's just that some of these people that claim everything is a wood structure just don't know how nature works. Nature can do some interesting things. Trees bend over and stuff like that, winds and snow load can do that so easy. And it does do that.
Yeah. That's it.
However,
yeah. Yeah.
Ron, I appreciate your time tonight. Thanks very much. And as I said, I'll link all Ron's details, website, and books into the show notes. And feel free to kind of look at your stuff. Absolute legend of the Bigfoot field, and I appreciate you coming on. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, you. My honor. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks, Ron. That's great.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay. I hope I helped something. That's all I hope for in these things, is that it helps something.
Yeah, that's why we do it as well. Just to we just do it to try and get more word out there, try and get more people to look at the field as a whole and understand it a bit more.
Yeah, we're all conditioned, and that's what we got to understand is whatever culture you're in, whatever religions you're in, where we were, you're conditioned in a box, and that's where your brain is formed. And anything outside that box is always questions, and it should be questions, or sometimes it's not even questions. You're there, and that's the way it's going to be, and you're stuck there, and you don't want to try to get out of it. But so I try to encourage just people to get out of their box and just have an open mind, because the parachute only works when it opens. You treat your mind like that. And another saying I got is, when you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot. So let's all just keep learning.
Like that.
You guys take care.
You too.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks,
Ron.
Ron.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah.